Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar brought to you by University of Illinois Extension and Rural Partners, the Illinois Rural Development Council. My name is Nancy Wodralgo with the University of Illinois Extension. We're so happy to co-host this webinar with Rural Partners on the Illinois Innovation Network and learn about the different initiatives and opportunities for collaboration across the state. And I'd like to reiterate to participants to put questions and comments at any time, and we're looking forward to a great Q&A after today's presentation. So now I'd like to introduce Laura Hepp-Kessel. Laura is the Director of Telehealth Services for Southern Illinois University School of Medicine and is also serving as Chair of the Board of Directors for Rural Partners. And then she'll do a brief introduction of our program and presenters today before handing it over for our main presentation. Laura, thanks for introducing today's program, and I'll pass it to you now.
Perfect. Thanks, Nancy. First, I'd like to thank Extension for partnering with Rural Partners to offer this webinar series. We've got some great webinars we've offered in the past and will continue to offer in the future. In case anyone's not familiar with Rural Partners, we are the state's Rural Development Council. We are membership driven. We have a volunteer board. We try to connect people with resources. If you're interested in learning more about Rural Partners, we're always looking for more members, and I will put a link to our website in the chat box so you can check us out. As Nancy said, I'm actually the immediate past chair of Rural Partners now, but happy to represent the board. We again appreciate that partnership with Extension. And for today's webinar, talking about the Illinois Innovation Network, first going to introduce Kyle Harfst, who is Executive Director of the Illinois Innovation Network, as well as Jerry Blazey, who is the Vice President of Research and Innovation at NIU. So I'm going to pass it on to Jerry. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone from DeKalb, Illinois. I hope you're all enjoying this fine fall day. Just a sound check. Am I audible?
Yep, you sound great.
Great. All right. Thanks, Laura, for the introduction and the opportunity for Kyle and me to discuss the Illinois Innovation Network, or the IIN, and possible collaborations with rural partners across the entire state of Illinois. And I do notice there's a significant overlap between this group and the IIN, as several II members are on this call. Next slide, please, Kyle.
It's frozen, Jerry. Hang on.
Give you a little history. Okay, I'll just start over. Just to start, we'd like to give you a little history of the IIN. It was formed in 2019 as a collaborative effort to ensure Illinois' role in the 21st century knowledge-based economy. It started out with a $1 billion investment, half of this through the state of Illinois through an appropriation for $500 million as a catalyst to establish 15 hubs of the network across the state of Illinois. And the hubs themselves came up with a $500 million match to reach that $1 billion investment level. Now, the hubs are generally aligned with public universities, which ensures demographic and geographic work, helps emphasize the connection and the impact between the public universities and the local communities, as well as the entire state. A linchpin of the entire network is the UI system support. They offer the administrative and development support through the University of Illinois Office for Economic Development and Innovation. And just to give you a sense of the estimated impact, the Boston Consulting Group did a study, and over the next 10 years, if the entire IIN is fully built out and in operation, we would see something like $19 billion in economic impact and 48,000 new economy jobs over that 10-year period. Of course, it's stretched out a bit because not all the hubs are up and running in full strength at this time. Kyle, next slide, please.
Jerry, sorry about this. I'm going to have to switch formats real quick.
Okay. Or, yeah. Okay, so we'll give it another go. The IIN had a facilitated exercise where we built out our vision and mission, and I think it is useful to share those with you. As you can see, the vision of the IIN is to drive inclusive and integrated research, innovation, and economic development across Illinois. And what we're really after there is a spectrum where research happens at the hub in collaboration with local communities, which leads to innovation and eventually workforce development and economic development. And I'll just mention that this echoes very much some of the national initiatives right now in terms of Build Back Better or the NSF innovation engines that are currently being proposed now. And Kyle will say a bit more about that later on in our talk. In terms of the mission, the IIN fosters collaboration, increases capacity, and integrates systems in education, research, and innovation by connecting people, organizations, and resources. And we see the ability of the hubs to convene communities to address problems that the communities are facing across Illinois is a very important role of the IIN. Next slide. Of course, we haven't been operating in a vacuum, and we paid close attention to strategic and state plans to provide us some guidance on areas we should emphasize. And I'm guessing that many of you on this call are more familiar with these two plans than I am. In fact, one of the plans is on the left, a plan to revitalize the Illinois economy and build the workforce for the future. And they identified several key industry clusters, all of them familiar: agritech, energy, IT, healthcare, manufacturing, and transportation and logistics. Another plan that was very important was the State of Illinois Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act Unified State Plan. And they identified a series of leading and emerging sectors the state saw investment would be a good bet. We took these and came up with the IIN hub themes and distilled it down to 4: computing and data, food and agriculture, environment and water, and health and wellness. And you'll see later on that each one of the hubs is focused on emphasize one or more of those themes as going forward with their operations. Next slide. As I mentioned, there's a statewide distribution of the hubs, and here we've overlaid the economic development regions in Illinois, the 10 regions, and the location of the various hubs. And you'll see that there is at least one university in every hub, and with the exception of Region 4, Cook County, where there's 4 hubs because of the population density around the metropolitan area. Next slide. Of course, every organization has to have some structure and governance, and I just go through this a bit so you'll know who you might want to reach out to when you find you would benefit from a collaboration with the IIN. We have the IIN Council that sits at the top. I have the honor of being the inaugural chair of the IIN Council. The council is advised by external advisory council. Lieutenant Governor Stratton is in fact a member of that council. We have the IIN Executive Committee that, as usual, operates when the time scale is shorter than the full council can accommodate. I chair that. We have representatives from Chicago State University, SIU, Western, and 2 representatives from the administrative agent or the Vice President's office, Vice President Jay Walsh, and Associate Vice President Kyle Harfst, who again will speak later. I would just like to take this opportunity to thank the U of I for serving as the administrative agent. Without that glue holding the IIN together, it would be really hard to move forward as a cohesive and coherent unit. The IIN Council is advised by 5 working committees: education and workforce development, corporate engagement, entrepreneurship, advocacy and policy, and research and collaboration. There are members from each of the hubs in these working groups or in these working committees, which is another avenue for you to reach out to the IIN if you're interested in resources or consultation or collaboration. Next slide. I'm not going to torture you by going through this organization chart. It's the fully built out org chart. It will be in the slides, and it's just serving as a reference for you for your local contacts or contacts you might be familiar with when you reach out to the IIN. Next slide. Well, what are the capabilities that IIN brings to the partners? First and foremost, they offer expertise in the four main areas or themes: computing and data, food and agriculture, environment and water, health and wellness. They can assist with entrepreneurship and inclusive integrated economic development in these four areas. And because the hubs are the members of a network, you're not really limited to the hub in your regional area. The expertise of the entire network is available to help you with your collaborative interests. Another very important capability of the IIN and the partnerships is we can maximize statewide potential to implement national capital project and programs quickly and equitably. And by that, I mean like the Build Back Better program or the NSF Engines programs. The IIN has served as a venue that has quickly responded to those opportunities with proposals and to those various programs. And Kyle will speak to those a bit more later in our presentation. And then, of course, we are well aligned with the regional and local industries and the philanthropic, sustainability, and innovation priorities of each of our regions. And that's great when you're looking for collaborative partners. Next slide. Again, I won't torture you by reading all this text here. That, it's breaking PowerPoint 101 guidance. But for your reference, here is the foci of the various hubs. I will just point out a few of them. Distillery Labs in Peoria offers innovation and incubation. At SIUE, there's a focus on food and entrepreneurship, research, and manufacturing. And in UIC Rockford, there's a focus on rural health. And at Western, there's a focus on manufacturing and entrepreneurship. So if there's some issue in those four areas, one of these hubs has that expertise to help you. And because it's in a network, all the hubs are available to all the regions of the state. So this will just be in your slide deck for future reference. Next slide, please. So since I'm at Northern Illinois, I'm happy to talk a bit at length about the mission of the Northern Illinois Center for Community Sustainability, which is our hub, not only to familiarize you with our hub, but also to give you a sense of how these hubs are moving forward and plan on working into the future. So the mission of NICS is to address the challenges of environmental change, shifting demographics, and socio-political inequity that impacts our region and the world in general. So to do that, we conduct research and innovation to advance sustainability in food systems, water resources, and environmental adaptation, all things that are highly in flux right now and will be for the coming decades, while also promoting science-based policies and practices for communities. And there's the link to the web presence at the bottom of the slide. Next slide. So where and what is NICS? Well, the graphic is just a overhead view of the NIU campus. The majority of that is in the lower right corner. Out on the left is the West Campus, and NICS will be located on a 20-acre plot in the middle of our West Campus. It's envisioned to be a 30,000 square foot facility with classrooms, labs for the research emphases, and spaces which will intentionally be built to promote collaboration, public outreach, and policy development. Excuse me. The cost is estimated to be $23 million, which $15 million comes from that state appropriations and an $8 million cost match from the university. We just started working with the Capital Development Board of the state of Illinois on the design. Excuse me. And it's possible, if there's no delays and the budgets stay regular and all the stuff that has to happen for the state to keep a project timeline, we could see beneficial occupancy sometime in 2025. Next slide, Kyle. But we have already started organizing research and innovation within the bounds of what I guess I would call a virtual NICS right now. One thing we're doing, and I'll give you 3 examples of 3 areas we're actively engaged. One is controlled environment agriculture. There's a focus on this because as the economy goes more and more carbon neutral, you are going to want to start growing things where you are rather than transporting them all over the country. And in this particular project, we're exploring the influence of production practices in vertical farming, specifically on quality and consumer tastes. And what you'll see here is a vertical rack of basil, admittedly a specialty crop, but a very popular specialty crop, where we're investigating the limitations and use of light quality to enhance the flavor. And it's a nice collaboration. We vary the spectra frequencies in the light, we vary the intensity. We ship the basil off of Urbana-Champaign for them to do an analysis of the flavor components of the basil and get a real qualitative sense or quantitative sense of how the light quality impacts the flavor. Next slide, please. Another example is emerging water contamination. I'm sure many of you, if not all of you on this call, are aware of the problems we face with pre and polyfluoroalkyl substances, or PFASs, or forever chemicals. They're pervasive in our environment and in us and in our water. State of Illinois does not have a comprehensive survey on the concentrations, the sources, and we're focused on the actual transport in the groundwater and working with SIUE on development of analytical tools. And you'll notice there are partnerships between these hubs that are promoted by the IIN. I'll just note that our neighboring state of Indiana has a very systematic approach to PFAS inventory and sampling, and Illinois has some catching up to do. Next slide, please. And our last example is climate change impacts on the Midwest. Here in NICS, we have a weather, climate, and society research group that looks at how climate and changing in the physical environment impacts influences the impacts of extreme events. What they do is they take the climate models and through some computationally intensive techniques, convert them into weather models at resolution scales equivalent to community sizes. And they focus on storms, snowstorms, floods, and fire weather, which is becoming increasingly common all across the country, something we really need to start understanding. They've received money from National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Agency to study this specifically for the producers, the agricultural producers and stakeholders in Northern Illinois and the Midwest. So if your community is starting to think about these weather perils in terms of their sustainability plans, you would do well to reach out to us and consult with us, because we're working on the modeling that will help you understand the future perils. Next slide, Kyle. Okay, so I've discussed a bit or presented to you the origins of the IIN, the extent of the IIN, a bit about its governance and its areas it's focusing on, some information on the individual hubs and how the hubs will work. But that's all sort of specific to the IIN and individual hubs. What Kyle will talk about is how the IIN can do IIN-wide or statewide activities. We've had actually a great deal of success in this area. Kyle, that group is standing in front of the Mississippi. Kyle is the individual, second one from the right. And with that, Kyle, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Jerry. One of the things I wanted to mention is Jerry had provided a very brief overview on the hub that's being developed or created at Northern Illinois University. Each of the 15 hubs has a very similar story, whereas Northern has sustainability as an emphasis or as a key area. You know, there are different emphases from each of the different hubs. And what I'd like to do very briefly is give you 4 examples of some of the partnerships and work that the Illinois Innovation Network has been involved with. Starting with sustaining Illinois seed grants. So it's been over 3 years ago when we did set up the governance structure of the IN. It was pretty clear that there wanted to be some type of shared governance with each of the universities or each of the hubs. And during that process, it was also discovered that in addition to Northern Illinois University, most, if not all of the universities did have a very interest in sustainability and what to do about being part of the solution to the grand challenges in Illinois. And so with this, the idea of providing proof of concept funding or seed funding was born. And we wanted to put some caveats to try to get interaction among universities within Illinois. And so within these small seed grants, no more than $30,000 with match strongly suggested, there has to be collaboration of at least 2 different hubs or 2 different universities. And there are 5 different sections on sustainability that must be addressed in those proposals. So it's not just the bench science. We're talking about education and workforce development, economic development, health and wellness, water, food and agriculture, and computing and data. And typically what we do with the funding cycles would be to follow the academic semesters because so many of the researchers are tied to those schedules. And so thus far, we've had 5. We do a fall as well as a spring funding announcement with the end of the semester, make an announcement of those funds, those recipients. Thus far, we've had 32 grants. Our office, in addition to Northern Illinois University, has seeded those. So I really appreciate Northern's participation with that. And nearly $1 million has been funded to date. Now with that, some of the goals would be for follow-on funding from the federal, state government, perhaps foundations, as well as additional support and collaboration among the different researchers. What I'd like to do next is give you very brief examples of 3 of the projects. So the first one, the title is Mapping and Spatial Analysis of Rural Broadband Access and Quality to Develop a Roadmap for Smart Farming in Illinois. 2 researchers from Illinois, one from Illinois State, or one from SIU Carbondale, were the leads on this. And basically to utilize existing rural structures to create a broadband network to really help with precision farming. And really the output suggests there is going to be an improvement in efficiency of yields. They had postulated 3.6% for corn, 3.8% for soybeans. Might not seem much to you non-farmers, but that's a really big deal to be able to improve your yield by that much. So again, that's a project that's being involved between Illinois State and SIU Carbondale. A second example title is Planning the Southeast Illinois P16 Computational Thinking Network. The leads are Eastern Illinois University and University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. So basically the vision is to meet the increasing need to deliver computer science and computational thinking training to K-12 and community college educators, starting with the rural area of southeastern Illinois. So up until recently, if you were a computer science teacher at the high school level in Illinois, there was really no certification or accreditation. That's changing. I think this will help address that particular activity. Champaign's Kenwood Elementary School really was the school that they're modeling this and utilizing this as an alpha or beta test, if you will. Third example, title is Squash Hunger in Eastern Illinois Through Partners in Produce, an initiative to improve food access and decrease food insecurity among low-income residents. Eastern Illinois University and University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign were the leads on this particular initiative, and essentially an ability to provide fresh produce to low-income residents, including blessing boxes at community gardens, and an expansion of the SNAP program led by University of Illinois Extension. And ultimately, the outcomes or the outputs was an increased produce capacity by 152%, and leveraging the program success to garner other grants in this process. So that was the Sustaining Illinois Seed Grant Program, just 3 examples of the 32 projects that have been funded to date. Another one is at the very southern tip of Illinois, Cairo. For those of you who don't know, Cairo is in deep southern Illinois, where the confluence of the Ohio and Mississippi rivers exist. There is a challenge as well as an opportunity in Cairo. The opportunity is in terms of river traffic. The most efficient or most economical form of transportation is through water. With the widening and deepening of the Panama Canal several years ago, these large containerized cargo ships can traverse through the Panama Canal. This provides a tremendous logistics opportunity because, in the past several months, you may have seen some clips from news programs regarding these containerized cargo ships docked or waiting to be docked on the West Coast. This provides an alternative. Right now, 80% of all barge traffic interior barge traffic travels across and through Cairo. This provides an opportunity to transport not just commodities, grain, coal, and so forth, but other goods that exist in the U.S. today. And so it's an opportunity where Cairo is in the process of designing a river port for this type of activity. State of Illinois is a large sponsor of this. It's a $350 million project. The state of Illinois is providing 40 million of that. And so great opportunity for Cairo. However, Cairo, as with so many other rural communities, has seen its infrastructure fade. And one of the challenges is in terms of food security. I talked briefly about that as one of the Sustaining Illinois Seed Grant programs. However, Cairo does not have a grocery store. There's no grocery store, there's no pharmacy, there's no hotel, no hospital, and so forth. So what can we do collectively when we're talking about a network of networks? What can the Southern Illinois region in combination or in conjunction with the entire state do to help Cairo as they plan for this large economic project? So one of the first things that we've looked at collectively with Western Illinois University, University of Illinois Extension, and a few others serving as leads is to address food insecurity through a couple different ways. One would be through the establishment of a grocery store cooperative. Right now, the citizens of Cairo, when they want to get their groceries, chances are the only options are to go to a different state. What this grocery store cooperative will do is provide an alternative to keeping the funds to pay for those merchandise in the community. The second part would be for those individuals who are not able to have healthy foods is to have a food cooperative, or excuse me, a food pantry. So those are just a couple of the examples where the location has been determined, the cooperative has been established, and it's anticipated to be open shortly after the first of the year. So again, many partners in this activity. Another example is, related to broadband or digital equity. All of us did have to survive the pandemic. Some, depending on zip code, were more successful than others because of broadband. I know when you're looking at trying to teach classes or take classes from home when the schools and the universities and community colleges are closed, it's very critical to address that. Well, not just times in the pandemic, we need to look at an overall digital plan for Illinois. And one of the things, I had a conversation a couple years ago with DCO's Office of Broadband, Matt Schmidt is the Deputy Director of that division. We talked about doing something where we could integrate the public universities or the Illinois Innovation Network with DCO's initiative in broadband. So one of the first things that we did was provide some seed funding, if you will, up to $50,000 to each of the regions within Illinois. So again, Jerry had talked about there are 10 economic development regions in the state. Each of those regions has at least one public university. Public universities are typically looked as trusted advisors or trusted partners. And so utilizing this activity where a number of the universities in Illinois have provided some initial broadband planning. We've had 2 cohorts, all 10 regions either have completed initial plan or are in the process of completing an initial plan through the Broadband Ready program. Since then, what we've been able to do is join partners with a number of folks, including University of Illinois Extension, the Benton Institute, Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, as well as the Illinois Innovation Network, to form what's called the Illinois Office of Broadband, the Illinois Broadband Lab, to support these activities. Looking at doing, or we are presently state and federal mapping resources, ready programming materials, and then here are the links to the broadband website. One specific example of digital equity and the issue coming to light is through the National Telecommunications Information Administration, NTIA for short. NTIA is part of the U.S. Department of Commerce, and in terms of federal relief for those digitally challenged communities, came out with the Connecting Minorities pilot project, of which Chicago State University is the lead, with partners from Northeastern Illinois University, University of Illinois Chicago, and then supporting institutions, Governor State and Northern Illinois University. A number of activities are in this project that has not been yet approved. One of them is providing additional bandwidth to Chicago State University's campus, as well as the local or the area communities. The establishment of digital navigators to help through this process is part of this initiative. And so when we're talking about broadband, the traditional definition was 25/3, that is the speed of 25 incoming, 3 outgoing. In many cases, Chicago State did not have that capability. The new definition may be as high as 100 incoming and 25 outgoing. The final example that I'd like to provide is the NSF engines, which NSF stands for National Science Foundation, another federal agency. The purpose of the engines program is to expand the nation's innovation capacity through investment in regional innovation engines. Essentially, as the pillars indicate, that use-inspired research and development, translation of the resulting innovations to practice through entrepreneurship, stakeholder development, and meaningful partnerships. And then workforce development is included at all levels, including experiential learning, leading to researchers, practitioners, technicians, innovators, entrepreneurs, and others. And those of you who are not familiar to NSF, traditionally they've been really had a science focus. They're really jumping with both feet into the economic development field with this particular initiative. There are 3 different proposals out there in Illinois that I just wanted to highlight. And there are type 1 and type 2 applications when we're talking about NSF engines. A type 1 application is basically for a planning activity up to 2 years in length. About $1 million is the maximum on that. One particular application is through Governor State University, utilizing their Supply Chain Innovation Center and Business Incubator. And the vision with this proposal is to develop a multimodal supply chain network that is clean, smart, seamless. Includes the entire state of Illinois. And our role through the IN is proposal development support across all 3 pillars of this NSF program. So that's the first example, or the first initiative. The second initiative is through the Discovery Partners Institute, affiliated with the University of Illinois Chicago. A type 2 application, as you can see, is much longer. It's 10 years in length, up to $160 million in grant funding. The vision and region has not yet been determined. Our role, again, will be to work on the workforce development portion of the application. Then the other proposal that I wanted to mention is initiated through the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, through the College of Agriculture, Consumer Environmental Studies, ACE for short. And again, this is a type 2 application, 10 years, up to $160 million. The vision is to transition agriculture and bioproduct production from a linear to a circular ecosystem. This region does encompass more than Illinois, including Nebraska, Kansas, Iowa, and Missouri. And our role through the IN is working with the workforce development working group. So again, those are 3 examples of some of the things that the IN is working with. The Sustain OIC grants, trying to get out proof of concept funding to have researchers or scientists throughout the state work with one another. Caro is a specific project. Then also the NSF engines is in terms of our support in getting these proposals out. So in closing, would like to consider, you have to consider the IN a partner for accessing statewide experts, entrepreneurship and economic development activities, and then again, leveraging state and federal opportunities. I'd like to mention that, yes, indeed, the Illinois Innovation Network is a network of networks. We do have 10 different regions, 12 different universities, and a total of 15 different hubs involved with this. Jerry and I's contact information is provided. With that, we'll be able to open up for questions.
Thank you so much, Kyle and Jerry. That was a really great overview, really important for folks to begin thinking about how they might fit into that bigger picture. And we do have one question so far. I want to really encourage all to put any of their questions in the chat. So we have one person here. They say, I know that Northwestern University had a membership with the Illinois Innovation Network at one point. How are they currently engaged? And this person thought they were previously engaged, so didn't know if you had any information about that.
Sure. When we're talking about network of networks, Northwestern is actually affiliated with the Discovery Partners Institute. The Discovery Partners Institute is one of the 15 hubs that have been established. They're located in Chicago, and what's known as the 78th would be the 78th region or section of the city that's being developed right now. And Discovery Partners Institute, with their network of networks, they do have a number of private universities, not just in Illinois, and I believe Northwestern Illinois is a part of that.
And we have another question here. Can you speak to the ways that Illinois Innovation Network focuses on rural issues? I ask this because the seminar is co-sponsored by Rural Partners. So
Sure.
you go ahead and speak to that a little bit.
And again, looking at different regions, we do have obviously urban and rural areas. And so depending on the region or, the economic development region, Western Illinois University has two different campuses. When we're talking about the Quad Cities campus, that's more of an urban, but the Macomb campus is going to have more of a rural spin on this. So we like to look at disadvantaged populations, and we're not just talking from a social aspect, but from also a geographic aspect. The challenge with the pandemic on digital inequity was very apparent, and it was hit extremely hard in rural communities. And so that's something we need to address as well. So again, going back to the region, depending on what the needs are, the IN stands poised to work with both urban and rural areas.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
So Jerry, I'm monopolizing this. Please jump in.
And you're muted, Jerry.
I was just saying you're doing great, Kyle. That would have been my same answer. Many of the hubs are in rural areas, many of them are in urban areas, and I think that the hubs that in the rural areas are really focused on rural issues. And then the IIN-wide efforts, such as the broadband, clearly are intended largely for are intended to benefit rural areas as well as disadvantaged urban areas.
That's great. Thank you so much. Regarding the National Science Foundation Engines application on the vertical areas, are there opportunities for the Illinois Innovation Network Hub startups to engage on those identified areas? Examples are ag tech, manufacturing, or logistics.
So by hub startups, Andrew, do you mean the hubs themselves? I'm not quite sure I understand what that means.
I believe that's what he means.
Yeah. So absolutely. Kyle pointed out that some of these proposals are type 1 proposals and some of them are type 2 proposals. Type 1 proposals are really planning proposals for an eventual type 2 proposal, which gets the large $160 million grant if successful. So in these planning proposals for the type 1 planning proposals, a lot of the effort during the planning exercise will be reaching out to partners and to engage them in the full proposal going forward. So there's absolutely implicit and explicit invitation to reach out to those type 1 proposals to see how you might partner with them in their region. The type 2 proposals are also in a planning stage. I think their proposals are due in early January. And they also are looking for partnerships to ensure that the benefits of the engines are spread across the whole region. So also there's an implicit or explicit invitation to reach out to those who are leading those proposals.
Thank you so much. And the next question kind of touches on something I was curious about, because we have a lot of different types of folks on the line today. And if I had to put them in 2 groups, one would be the folks who are doing this work, and then the folks who want to be, or, might be like direct beneficiaries, or their communities might be beneficiaries of this work. And just kind of wondering, this with such a large scope and kind of a lot of different issues and problem areas being addressed with all that IIN does, and how would one, if one was a local leader or a sort of a community-based organization, start out by trying to explore those different types of collaboration? And do you have something in mind that you kind of wish folks would reach out about in general? And I'd love for you to talk on this, but the question specifically here is, what's the first point of contact to discuss projects and resources with IIN?
Sure. Probably the easiest way is to send me an email, or to send Jerry an email, and we can go ahead and respond individually. The broader discussion item is, when we talk about the network of networks, it's not just one large state organization. It's 15 different smaller units within 10 different regions. So for example, Southern Illinois University Carbondale, which I do have a large amount of familiarity, they've had a couple of different network meetings, if you will, for that particular region, the Southern Illinois region. So in addition to the university, they have folks from the community colleges within that those county areas. And then they also have other not-for-profits, as well as some for-profit organizations. So I would, you can start with us, but there are additional hub leaders. So earlier I had talked about there are 15 different regions. We've set up this IN council, which Jerry Blazey is chair of. And so there's a representative who sits on the council from each of those hubs. Therefore, that person, which we did not have a slide, well, we did have a slide, but that was the busy slide that Jerry showed, would indicate who that contact person is. So going back to the SEO Carbondale example, Lynn Anderson Lindbergh, who is the director of the research park as well as the economic development office, she would be the primary point of contact, but we're more than happy to provide that connection.
Thank you. And I have also pasted the contact information in the chat for folks who want to, pull that off and, have a note for themselves on next steps. And we have another question here. Our local rural hospital is losing our dialysis unit. This will cause patients to travel over 40 miles to receive treatment. What can be done to save this life-saving dialysis unit? Really great example question, example issue.
Jerry, you want to start and I'll finish?
Yeah, so as I said, that is really an incredibly important question, Ed, and a real need needs to be addressed there. As I said in my comments, each one of the hubs has expertise, and individuals should feel free to reach out to their nearest hub or any of the hubs to seek help. And the hub with the most expertise in this area, I would say, is the UIC Rockford hub, which specializes in rural health. So I don't know the answer to the question, but I do know the answer. I do know who you should talk to try to address this, and that's the leader of the hub in UIC Rockford. Alex Stagnaro, what's the full name?
Alex Stegnar Green is the contact
Yeah.
person there.
Yeah,
But then also we have other universities who, for example, the SIU Center for Rural Health and Social Service Development with locations in Springfield and Carbondale. So depending on the location, it's a big challenge. I don't think I have a good answer right now. You know, my mother is on dialysis. She had to travel 20 miles each way to go for dialysis. So I had actually investigated what are the opportunities, what is it going to take to get dialysis to be located in her community. It's not an easy answer.
Really appreciate both of your contributions to that question. We have another question that kind of overlaps, but definitely deserves its own focus. How can a nonprofit start to engage with IIN? How can a nonprofit take advantage of IIN?
Again, we have a couple different ways. One is if they want to get involved at the local or the regional level, we can put them in touch with the hub point of contact. But then also, Jerry had talked a little bit about the 5 different working committees that are involved based on topical area. Again, corporate engagement, education, workforce development, entrepreneurship, advocacy and policy, and then research. So we do have probably over 120 people on those committees. They're not just related to the university. They belong to not-for-profits and other organizations. So that would be one of the first ways I would get involved in one of those committees or subcommittees, depending on what their interest is. You know, if they have more of an interest on social innovation, it would probably go to the social innovation subcommittee under entrepreneurship. But again, we're happy to help find a good fit for that interest.
Yeah, I would just add to that, Ron, that look at the specialties of each one of the hubs and feel free to reach out directly to those that are most aligned with whatever issue it is that you're looking for a partner or you're looking for partnership.
I just want to draw everyone's attention to the chat box. I went ahead and inserted those slides there as well. You can double click on those and it should download. Another question just came through. I work in an area that was previously represented by the West Central Development RDA. After that entity failed, we no longer have an RDA. Can you help? This is the Jersey, Green, Calhoun, Macoupin, Montgomery, Bond County region.
I'm gonna say perhaps. I don't know what would it be entailed with this activity, but one of our partners, we're not just partners with other universities. United States Department of Agriculture, their rural development arm, led by Betsy Dirksen-Longren. She's the state director. She's working with us on a number of fronts. One of the initiatives she's working on is the equity initiative that is coming from the White House, actually. So something like this may have relevance where we could collectively talk through and find out, you know, what can be done to help save this.
Thank you. Just want to let folks know there's still some time left if they want to add some more questions in. We don't currently have a question ready right now, but I can give the opportunity to the speakers to really speak to some takeaways or some ideas that they have and want folks to know about.
Nancy, I think we might have missed a question from Matt Johnson. Can any of the projects presented be replicated or completed in other rural communities? Or are the IIN grants and projects all completed separately? I guess, Matt, I would say both. Some of these seed grants are completed separately, but then they offer some lessons and knowledge that could be adopted by any of the other rural communities. For instance, I talked about vertical farming and, you know, what makes it most efficient and palatable. There's that knowledge is available to any community. In the statewide projects, I think it's actually happening already. I mean, with the broadband, we're definitely planning for all regions of the state. And I would, on that particular aspect, I would urge you to reach out to the broadband lab if you have some interest. Kyle, can you add anything to the?
No.
question?
You're right on, Jerry. I think in terms of the capital funding, that's already been allocated or appropriated. But one of the things we do is we have a director of research and program development who helps solicit and investigate federal and state grants. And so those could be their operational or capital. So certainly we can have a conversation and see if we can help you.
Yeah, man, I'll add to that. I think I have a better understanding of your question. So the IIM funding was intentionally largely correlated with state universities. And in many ways, that was a political calculation that permitted the funding to be acquired and managed in a equitable way and a reliable way, I would say. But there's no prohibition for community colleges to align themselves with some of the nodes. In fact, we've had long conversations with the community. How do the community colleges fit into this? And in fact, we have a representative from the community college community on our advisory board. So one way you can replicate this idea of as a hub is by going to your local community college and working with them to create a relationship with one of the established hubs that already are getting involved in the IIN. So I hope that's a little bit sharper answer to your question.
It's wonderful. Often we see, folks across the state, there's lots of people willing to put efforts into solving problems, and the question becomes where are the resources? And here now we have more of an opportunity of there's resources to take advantage of, and a network of networks to take advantage of, and folks can then just jump in and see where they fit. So we're going to put up a quick poll on knowledge gain. Actually, this is just a quick question for participants today on if they felt like they gained some knowledge on the Illinois Innovation Network. Really thank you for sounding in and letting us know if we're providing information that's useful, relevant, and also something that maybe you didn't know about beforehand. And any other questions that folks have, as well as comments from the presenters?
I would just like to say the members of the IIN don't get to vote.
That's right, because then you'll pull our numbers down. Knowledge gained, if you know everything already, then just keep it to yourself, I guess. Well, we're really happy to have you on, and thank you so much for your time and sharing, all of this information in one place. And of course, for all you do, there's a lot of little details to this and quite a bit of intention and thought put into it. So we're really thankful to have you on. And of course, we really hope that you'll return with even, just some more project information, and maybe feature some of the other projects and hubs, and as we move forward, and hope to have you back on again in the future as well.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So with that, thanks everyone for coming. You'll receive the follow-up information shortly this afternoon, and really hope we see you on the next webinar. Thank you for your participation, and we hope you have a great rest of your week.